I'm generally in that camp too. I think it's very educational to try as hard as you can to like intuit the author's intent from the book, if it's possible,
right,
and try to do it. But the benefit of that is for someone who is curious and wants to make that discovery, which is generally where I am, especially as a game designer. I want to see that in what happens when you just follow the rules.
Welcome to Tabletop Talk, the podcast where I delve into the minds of tabletop gaming creatives. Join me as I uncover their creative process and inspirations. You are in the right place if you enjoy listening to thoughtful interviews with creative people.
Hey, this is Jake from GameGearMaster.com. When I'm not making choreno, you'll find me listening to Tabletop Talk.
Howdy friends, Craig here. My guest today is John Harper. Now, if you listen to this podcast, you've heard John on the show, and more importantly, you've heard him talked about in dozens of my interviews with other designers. John is the creator of Blades in the Dark, Lady Blackbird, Aegon, and Lasers and Feelings. Incidentally, this is John's fourth appearance on the show, and so we have much to discuss. Welcome to Third Floor, John, or back to the third floor.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
So, John, you have already been subjected to the origin story question, so I shall spare you that. We will have links in the show notes to where people want to find out how you came to be as a gamer and a designer. So I spent a little bit of time trying to think of what I wanted to talk about in this first segment. And something that I have been thinking a lot about and has come up in some of my interviews a little bit, and I really, if there's anybody whose brain I want to pick on this, it's you. And that's kind of the maintaining of creativity. You now are in a situation where you have been doing that for the majority of your life, in some form or another, but even just as a games designer, you've done it for a very, very long time. So I guess my first question is it hard to maintain creativity over that long of a period, over decades?
Yeah, it comes and goes is my general answer, but over time, that maintenance or keeping that creative spark going has become easier and more sustainable. And I think that for me, it has to do with spending a lot of time doing it professionally in a creative field that I enjoyed, but doing work that I didn't necessarily have a ton of attachment to. About 25, 30 years ago, I started working in the creative agency world and doing, daily creative work, mostly
it's
visuals,
a hard life,
graphics,
dude.
and stuff. Yeah, it can be. It's prone to burnout because you're working on projects that you don't really necessarily care about or want to do, and but what that did is it created a kind of, I don't want to call it discipline. That's too strong a word. A habit, I guess, sort of form. Because you got to show up and do the work when you're not in the mood to do it, and when it's not sparking for you, or when you don't like the client, or whatever it is, you still have to do it. And finding a way to maintain that momentum, and also to still try to like compartmentalize a bit and say, okay, maybe this isn't really what I want to be doing, but I'm going to try to make this the best it can be. I'm going to try to do my best work with these constraints. And over time, moving into different agencies and things, I did end up doing work that I did like and enjoy, and clients that I liked. But having that daily, just the need to show up and do it, working out that creative muscle, so to speak. I think that helped a lot. And so burnout still happened, and it does still happen. But has less impact, I feel, on me. Like it doesn't stop me in my tracks as much.
Right.
Emotionally, it can be difficult when, you're working on something that either just will not come together, or doing a project for someone else, which I don't really do much anymore, but you can get into those spaces where they're not happy with it. You're not happy with it. It feels like the gears are grinding. That happens. But again, if you're in that space of saying, okay, tomorrow I'm going to come back to the desk again, and I'm going to do it again. It's not the end of the world. I've been here before, kind of thing. And that comes with time and experience. But I guess if I had to give advice, it would be that the thing that most writers and people say about this type of work, like just write 10 words today, just do something today. Because once you step back from it and let yourself stop, it's easier to stop doing it and the next day and the next day and the next day and just never get back and never get out of that rut. So yeah, I guess, I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but
it does. And it spurns like 15 more. So buckle up.
Cool.
So I just recently was talking to Mike Hutchinson, a mini designer and RPG designer over in the UK. He's been on the show several times as well. Really, really good guy. And he just recently went full time as a designer. So that happened to you a while ago. And I guess my first question is, when did the honeymoon end? Right. So when you quit the job that you had to show up at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. in the morning, and you had to work on projects that weren't yours, and suddenly you moved to, now it's just my shit. How long did that honeymoon last before it became a job again, or did it never become a job again?
It didn't quite become a job again in that sense. I was fortunate that I had a situation where I could have a very easy transition between the two modes. I essentially just started changing my schedule at my job. My employer was really cool about that, and they wanted to, help that transition process. So I just started scaling back almost, quarter of my time off, and then half. It became half time. Yeah. And just gradually scaled it back. So I was spending half my time on my own and stuff, and half time, working there, which at that type of job in that environment with those people, several of my coworkers there were playtesting Blades in the Dark with me every day at the office, Yep. So it was already kind of mingled together to some extent. But because I got to have a very gradual sort of release from that, I got to do stuff like Lady Blackbird and back in those times when it was, putting out free work or short games or just stuff for fun that wasn't like, this is my new career yet. It was more like I've got more time now and I can focus on these things a little more, dipping my toe in, because I had a previous time, we've talked about this before, but 99, 2000-ish, me and my design partner back then took a stab at starting a game company. We published the 4th edition of Talislanta, and we're taking books to conventions and like doing all that kind of stuff, and like maybe thinking about turning that into a business. Right. And we were both in the .com boom in Seattle, and we're thinking like, okay, cool, we're gonna take some money from these overpaid stupid jobs that we have at a .com and turn it into we're gonna sell role-playing game books. That's a good idea.
Yeah, you would make tens of dollars.
Yeah, we did. We definitely did. And that didn't work out. That it didn't become a career in that sense. It was another
was that
kind
because
of
a financial thing, John, or it just wasn't your thing?
It was. We had this opportunity to deliver something that we were fans of to a creator who really liked what we were doing, to a community that was really into it. Mm-hmm. And that was a great process, and it taught us a lot about making those kind of things. But once we delivered that, it was kind of this big final project, this capstone for Talislanta. They've done stuff since then, but it was, at the time, it was kind of the final piece. And so we just stepped back and realized, like, well, this isn't necessarily a sustainable ongoing business for us. It's a big project that we delivered, and it's over now, and we can move on to whatever's next. And also Jonathan, at the time, he was kind of the business guy. He was more about running the business, and I didn't really want to do that. And when he was like, I think I don't want to do this, then I was like, well, I'm not going to take it over. I just want to like write words and make pictures and stuff. So, and financially, it wasn't very sustainable back then. We could have made it work probably, but it was still in that time when you really needed to do these big print runs and try to sell, and financial, it's risky. The PDF stuff was coming along, and by that point, Jared Sorensen was already like selling PDFs, I think, even before that. But it was an interesting thing. It was like this almost it almost happened. We almost
Right.
became like a role-playing publisher in 1999, which is a weird thing to think about.
It is.
And we were
It's
here in
also weird to
Seattle
think about
with,
how
like,
long ago that was.
I know, right? Pagan Publishing was here, and
Wow.
Dennis Detwiller and Deathla Green and all those. John Tynes, we knew those guys, and they were doing it. They were making a go at it, and so that was another factor where we talked to them and we're like, okay, maybe we can do this. But in hindsight, I'm really glad we stepped away and ended up having the careers we had, and coming back to it later, because I think it, especially for me, working at the agency for so long, just really developed that ability to stay in the pocket and stay inspired and keep going.
So for what you're doing, John, I'm going to assume there's kind of two big buckets. There's what I'll call the admin piece, right? Where you got to pull down the money, you got to organize the money, you got to organize the projects, all that less than fun stuff. And then, the time to pull out and get creative and play with stuff and mess with stuff. I'm hearing that structurally people are finding it easier to do one versus the other, either on certain days or certain part of the days. How does that break down for you?
Yeah, I definitely want to do as little admin as I can. And fortunately, I've got Evil Hat is kind of my like de facto publisher. It's a case by case basis, but we kind of have this understanding like, well, I'm probably going to want them to publish it, and they're probably going to want to. And that means I'm, in addition to being friends with Sean Nittner, he's like officially my design collaborator and admin person and project manager. So I'm very fortunate to have that resource. So I can kind of ignore it until it gets to that. I can ignore those emails for as long as I want to, until Sean actually like sends me a chat and is like, these are the 3 things you need to answer. So that's very good.
Does Sean manage you, John?
Yeah. I mean, we've gotten into this great rhythm. He understands me and I understand him. And
that's cool.
It's a real, I mean, I can't understate how great that is, to have that part of the business kind of off my shoulders.
There's a lot of designers that are very envious you right now. Listen, for sure.
Yeah. And it gets worse because Sean is also an amazing creative collaborator, which is another aspect of talking about burnout, like it being on your own in your own head by yourself, trying to solve every problem.
Yeah.
That can contribute to it too. And having that creative partner to bounce ideas off of, but also like someone who's just good at the thing itself, and is going to see things that you're not thinking of and reflect things back, bring their own ideas, and that reinvigorates the whole thing. If I am in that place where I'm kind of like dragging my feet or like, man, I don't know, I'll get back to this later or whatever. And then Sean sends me this mail. It's just like, okay, I went through it and here's what I think about all these things. And I go, oh, that's so great. Or like, no, I don't want to do it that way. But that makes me think of this other thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And having that kind of collaboration, I think is another key or a useful tool to avoid like really severe burnout. If someone else is excited about it, you can get excited again, and vice versa. Sean's like, I don't know about this. And then I can be like, yeah, I have 6 new ideas. Yeah.
So for me, John, the closest thing I have to believing in magic or believing in a power is creativity. I am often amazed about what happens just within my own life, where I'll create something and go back and look at it and go, where the hell did that come from? Does that happen to you as well? Or can you think of a time recently where you've gone back and looked at something and you don't really know how that happened?
Yeah. It's the kind of thing I try to track. If I know I'm making something that's probably going to end up being some finished thing, I always want to have those touchstones listed and inspirations listed and credit where credit's due kind of stuff. I like to collect that as I go along. But for every single thing I've done years later, I go, oh, damn it. Why didn't I mention that? Of course, that was a big inspiration for what I was like. Blaze in the Dark doesn't list Fallen London.
Yeah.
And I played Fallen London to death and talked to the people at Failbetter, and like it's totally obvious that it's a huge inspiration. But it's not listed, and I, kick myself now, but I think it was so much of an influence that it just like became invisible, and I wasn't even aware of it anymore.
What I'm wondering though, John, is have you looked at some of your work the day after, 10 years after, and impressed yourself, right? Where you look at something and go, this is really, really good. I don't really remember where it came from or how it happened. But now that I'm looking at it again, it's almost like magic that this thing was created by me. Has that ever happened?
Yeah. There's several examples. One is Agon first edition. It came together really quickly over about 6 weeks of playtesting and writing and layout and publishing. Like it just like flew together and clicked really well. And I was just amazed, like, wow, everything is like really, this is what we wanted it to be. And years later, before we started working on second edition, I was going through I used to do everything in notebooks by hand. And now it's all just, Google Docs and stuff. But I was flipping through notebooks. I was doing a move, and I was like, oh, I'm finding all these old things. Yeah. And I found a notebook that was filled with these design notes for a game from a couple years before we did first edition. And it was essentially the system, the first edition Agon game system, just sitting there on the page. And at the time when we were making it, I was like, this is clicking so fast. It feels like,
isn't that funny?
How is this coming together so easily? And I just took it for granted. Like, well, we're just cooking. This is just really great.
Turns out you'd made it a couple years before.
I had already done the work earlier. So it was an actual magic trick. It was like,
oh, that's funny.
You can't see the moves behind the curtain kind of thing. And that happens every now and then when I'm struggling with something now. I know enough now to go, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to go back into my old documents. I've probably solved this problem somewhere before or thought of it somewhere else before, and try to like kickstart or like jumpstart the engine again by looking back at that older thing. Because probably I discarded it for a reason. Yep. But looking at it is going to make me go, oh wait, I'm better at this now. I know how to fix that, and I can still use it to help what I'm doing now.
Do you think there's a difference, or do you notice a difference in two different modes? So mode one, you've kind of talked about a little bit, John, which is I'm going to put 10 words on the page. I'm going to force myself to sit down and I'm going to get some work done. I'm not going to be some pie in the sky, creative Picasso, and everything just flows out of me. I need to get this done, so I'm going to make it happen. Versus points of inspiration where you can't help yourself, where you turn the TV off, run to a notebook or a Google Doc and start typing. In those two different modes, is there a difference in the output, or does it end up being the same, or is it just all meshed together?
Yeah, I think there's a difference in the output generally. The okay, I need to get something done today stuff very often doesn't survive much for me. Like it's there, and it's mostly there to be fixed later or to be material to work with instead of a blank page. My old business partner, Jonathan Elliott, he taught me this before we started working on Talaslanta. We were both doing these like early Paint Shop Pro and then Photoshop 1 projects for making.
You are old, John.
I know.
Because I'm just as old, so keep going. Sorry.
The business we had before we did Talaslanta was we made websites because we could type HTML into Notepad.
Amazing.
And had Paint Shop Pro.
Yeah.
And so we got these jobs where people would give us these vague ideas of what to make. And I would like try to make the first draft be the finished draft and essentially like make it perfect. And that's tough to do. I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
And Jonathan was like, just do the whole thing as fast as you can. Do the whole graphic as fast as you can. And when you come back tomorrow, you'll look at it and you'll go, well, obviously it shouldn't be that.
Mm-hmm.
This should be over here. And that should be this ratio. And da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And so the kind of like force yourself to work. I shouldn't say I don't force myself to work. I one of the benefits of not having a day job is I don't actually have to do that. Right. But I try to do it as a practice, as a positive, thing. And part of the output of that first mode is so I can come back to it later and have something there to work with instead of another day of, well, is this even going to be? I've sort of filled that space, and I do that a lot since I work in layout a lot. That helps too, because I'm already kind of mapping out like, okay, should be a spread probably. And if it's not enough for that, then I know I need some spot art here. Yep. Or if it's 3 pages, that's awkward because I usually like to work with spreads. So maybe can this be more concise, or can I be more verbose? Or once I've got it in there, I know that's not what it's going to be, but I can come back and fix it. And that's kind of the like mechanical troubleshooting, problem solving mode. And then I think the other mode you're talking about is that it's really inspired, the voice of the thing and the look and feel of it. And I spend way more time on that, probably for any project, I'll do 20 or 30 kind of look and feel pieces.
Sure.
Sitting in Photoshop, like playing around with a million different things. What if it's collage? What if it's this color? What if it's that style? What if it's retro? And just trying to find that spark, because I know what I want it to be. And once I have that, even though I know I'm going to change it later, that's super inspirational for me then going forward, because now when I look at it, I go, this thing looks cool. I should make it because it looks cool. Yeah. And it also works on the marketing side later. Like I've been messing around with this new project that's got this very distinctive look for all the covers. It's kind of this throwback. I think you've seen that on Blue Sky, throwback style. And I spent, 4 or 5 days just moving stuff around until I got to that. And once I got that, I'm like, okay, great. Now, when I look at that cover that looks kind of like Jurassic Park, I go, I want to make that. Yep. I want to make the stuff that's inside that cover. And then from a marketing perspective, I can post that and people get excited in the same way. They go, I want to see what's inside that. I want to see what's inside that cover. And that, to me, that's definitely the most fun part of it, is that pure inspiration, finding the thing, figuring out what it's going to be. And then it's a slow process of less and less and less of that, and more of problem solving and finishing the project, kind of trading one for the other.
It's very interesting, John, to think of that idea of making the cover and it spurring you to make the inside. I've never thought about it but that way, but like I can see it the way you're saying it. And that leads me to think about too, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have kind of 2 lanes here, right? There is the game designer, the writer, and then there's the visual artist. And obviously one informs the other, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And here comes your Sophie's choice. Do you find more joy in one or the other? Or is it just all like together?
It's kind of all together. I guess I do generally, the visual side of things is more of my background. I enjoy writing, but sometimes the writing that isn't the game design sometimes the harder part for me to get out. I haven't worked that muscle as much. I'm not someone who writes as a writer like every day, but I do visual stuff every day. And then the game design is like also something I like a lot. And a lot of that is play. Right. So that's just fun to do. Design on my own I enjoy that too, but it's mostly around like play storming, play testing, and they inform each other. They kind of all exist together. When I was a little kid, I thought I wanted to be a comic book artist, and I got how to draw comics the Marvel way and would make pages and characters. But then when I saw my first RPG, my older cousin had D&D, And that way I didn't play it. I just saw his books and flipped through and saw like, oh, it has a bunch of text and numbers and tables, and then these art with monsters, and the monsters all need to have numbers, and there's maps of corridors. And I went home and got graph paper and I didn't start making dungeons. I mean, I did, but I started making a book, like with pages and page numbers and binding it together in a 3-ring binder. And like, I wanted to make the whole thing, like these words and pictures and game rules all exist to be put together in one thing. And so, yeah, that's the fun for me, is I kind of do want to make the whole thing because it fits together. It's informing each other and reinforcing each other.
I would like someone to get their doctorate in figuring out how many artists owned How to Make Marvel Comics, or How to Make Comics the Marvel Way by Busiek. Because I mean, that book has come up so often on my podcast. It's a book that as soon as someone mentions it, I see the cover, I see the step-by-steps in it. It was an incredible book, but it's very funny, John, for you to bring it up because it comes up over. It was a very influential book.
I don't even remember. I think I was given it as a gift, because everyone knew I was into comics. And it's funny though, because I loved reading them, and I drew constantly and would make character designs and pages, but I never made a comic. A lot of people that I've talked to that were into that, they would like make their own comic, and they would be like 16 pages, and they would make it. And I never did that. I liked designing characters and figuring out what their cool powers were, and making a page spread of a explosion, an energy blast or whatever. And I think I was just waiting for the container of RPG instead of comic book. And
it's literally what you do now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. That's really, really funny.
It's weird. I didn't know that's what I wanted, but yeah.
Guys, the Insider Insight series allows me to sit down with designers, developers, artists, writers, and creators and learn how they approach their work. I try to understand their process, inspiration, and the methods for crafting their creations. We're going to come back here with John to figure out where the hell the deep cuts come from. We'll be right back.
Robin is a notorious art thief. Fox is a well-respected special agent. Will Fox catch Robin? Will Robin get away? And before the end, will they kiss? Kiss Me If You Can is a 2-player rom-com romp about art heists and love, coming this July from me, Sam Dunawald, host of the games podcast Dice Exploder. If you want to make your own rom-com in under an hour with someone you enjoy flirting with, go to Kickstarter now and follow Kiss Me If You Can.
John, you were kind enough to kind of slip me a copy of this a little early, and I was a bit blindsided by it. I'm going to quickly read the little blurb for everybody so they have context. And then, John, I have questions. Blades in the Dark Deep Cuts is a 120-page expansion for the Blades in the Dark role-playing game, containing a treasure trove of lore, setting material, and alternative mechanics John's developed over the years for use in Blades campaigns. Now, normally, John, and we've done this with several of your games, I go all the way back in time and talk about where this first started. And I feel like I have to do it a little bit differently here. I guess, did you start messing with Blades as soon as it came back from print? Or was there a period of time where you left it alone?
Yeah, I was still hacking it and messing around with it when it was at the printer. Mm-hmm. In the years before that, the whole time, essentially from the first session playtest to the last Blades campaign I ran, I've always treated the game like this kind of living thing to be molded and shaped and changed and mutated. Not just in the Forge in the Dark sense. Obviously, that's a thing where people use the system and change it and make new games out of it. But specifically for Blades in the Dark, like that it doesn't have to be a sort of canon of either in the setting or in the system. It's a thing you make when you play the game. Mm-hmm. And that includes changing and adding and deleting and all of that. Specifically for heists and stuff in Duskfall, and for the particular people at the table, right, and what they want and what they're interested in and what bores them and what excites them. And I was inspired by Vincent and Meg's chapter in Apocalypse World about hacking Apocalypse World. And, you know, when we were first playtesting Apocalypse World, right away, I was making custom moves and Vincent put a couple of them in the book. And he knew right away that that's what people were going to do and wanted to support that. And the same kind of thing happened where people took the PBTA core and tended to make new games with it, as opposed to really hacking Apocalypse World when they played Apocalypse World. Not everybody. I mean, some people did. I did. Mm-hmm. Tons of custom moves and change stats and all kinds of stuff while we played Apocalypse World. So I included that in Blades. There's a chapter on changing the game specifically about playing in Duskfall and changing how stress works or changing how special abilities work. And over the years, I've collected my own changes and hacks. And also I had, from the original playtests and even post Kickstarter, there were like 3 ways to do a thing and they were all pretty good. Right. And it was just a matter of like figuring out which one was sparking with the community the most. The G+ community was a huge help with that, because I liked all of them pretty much and had run all of them like the way position worked or whatever. And it was this process of almost like collecting playtest data. We had like hundreds of groups playing. It was crazy. And that informed like, okay, we're going to settle with this one. This is what's going in the book. But I really want to put this chapter in that says like, there's more than one way to do this. And you don't have to stick to this one thing. There are other options that are good too. And just watching IPs and stuff, I see very little changes. Every now and then someone will do a change, but it's pretty rare. And yeah, the last time I ran Blades, I used 3 or 4 different systems, and had new factions and stuff. And I was like, you know what? I want to see more of this in the world. I want to see people do this when they play Blades. I want to make them excited about it. And so why not just share, like, here's a whole new set of things that I've come up with. And
and are you jotting these down as you go, John? Like, are they happening at the table? You're like, you know what? I want to try something. Or do you come to the table going, I've got this idea for harm and let's play using this idea? Like, or like, how does that work?
It's both. Sometimes it's just on the fly, because several parts of the game are pretty transparent. Like you can easily see like, well, what if we just make this 2 instead of 1? Right. And it's obvious that that's going to have this impact. But other times it is just from running and playing the game a bunch and a bunch of other Forge in the Dark games. It's almost like just flipping through this catalog of previous things that I've tried and going, oh yeah, when we did it that way, that worked well for that group because they didn't like downtime. They wanted it to be really fast. Yep. So let's do that. Let's do the one where you don't roll dice and see how that goes with this group of players, because it seems like that's what they want. And then they still want to roll for vice. Okay, we'll do that. That's fine. And seeing that range of preferences over time kind of creates, at least mentally, ultimately it was a whole set of Google Docs, but create a kind of catalog of, okay, where is this group falling on the spectrum of setting up a score? How fast do they want that to go? Or how long do they want that to last? How do they want heat to work? Are they feeling that, oh, this is this type of group? I've had this group before. They're like, pile the heat on. We're not getting enough. And I go, oh, right. Yeah.
We all have our kink.
Exactly. But like, I remember like, oh yeah, I've played with a group like that before. I know how to tweak the game so it produces that type of result. But then other times it is like alive, happening at the table, in the moment, and calling all the way back to the development of the game, because that's how we played it. It was session by session, just like in the middle of a session, we would be like, maybe, I don't know, let's do this instead.
Yeah. So I've talked about your game a lot on the show with a lot of different people. And one comment that I've said a few times, is that I find blades as printed, a very tight clock. And I just realized what I just said. But it all these gears work together, and it's a very tight thing. And every time I found myself struggling with blades, I went back to the book and realized it's because I was using the wrong gear, right? And I was struggling with downtime because of how I was incorrectly assigning stress, right? Like I found that everything was interconnected. So it's interesting. How hard is it to pull one thing out and put one thing in such a tight machine, the way that I conceive of?
I think it depends on the type of group you have, the type of players you have, the type of GM people are. If you're the type that kind of wants a highly repeatable, kind of reliable experience, and especially when you're learning a style of play, having something that is solid and you come to learn it, like you said, like this isn't working right. Oh, wait, it's because I'm doing this part wrong.
Yep.
And it's like a process of gaining mastery over the thing before you can feel good about just freewheeling it. You know, you want to have that solid, like interlocked thing. And that's what all the playtest groups, the G+ groups really taught us in the development, because Blades was much looser and more freewheeling for a while, because that's kind of the type of GM that I am. And, you know, just it should be like this, and assign heat, you know, you have a feel for it, and it still maintains some of that. There's a ton of judgment calls, but they became like, okay, it's 2, 4, 6, or 8 probably, and coin payoffs is probably 2, 4, 6, or 8, and all these numbers started to align, and so many groups were like, oh, thank you, man. I would just I don't like to just like make stuff up and vibes, you know, through everything. And so the game did become tighter and tighter and tighter as it went through that process. And there are some groups that's really what they want. They want it to be that clockwork machine, and you can still, because it is a clockwork like that, you can take that gear out and put another one in that fits in that space, and it will still run, even though it runs slower or faster or whatever. It doesn't break it. But if you start taking them all out, you know, the fear is like, well, it's all just going to come tumbling down. And that, again, I think depends on the players in the group, like their tolerance for risk taking at the table. And like, are we just going to try this and hope for the best? Are we going to really hold on lightly here and be like, okay, we're going to try this other version of harm this session, but if we don't like it, it's fine, we'll just switch it back again. But again, that takes a level of like comfort and familiarity that not everybody wants that. So some people do want something that's kind of immutable, and that's another reason why I made this product, is I'm kind of banging on the glass like, it's okay, you can change things, don't worry about it. It's
What's funny about it for me, John, is that and this is not something unique just to your game. I felt this with other games, but we're talking about yours. And it's interesting because my journey with Blades has been documented. The AP that I did on my channel, if you watch me over, I think we did like 12 or 13 episodes, you can watch me evolve, you can watch me fight the game, and then release myself to the game. and then like, I think like the last 2 episodes or 3 episodes of that AP is when I felt like I was really playing Blades. But it was a journey, and it's very interesting how that is. And it brings up a pet peeve of mine, which I don't know if you share or not. And this is a really like stupid pet peeve, which is, and you'll see it like, you know, on forums and stuff like that. Someone goes, you know, I just picked up Blades. I've been reading it. I'm super excited about running it next week. I'm going to make a few changes to it. And I don't know why, John. And it's not just with Blades. It happens with Forbidden Lands is another game that people do that with. And I'm like, no. Run it as written first before you do anything like that. And it's a huge pet peeve of mine, which leads to my next question. Oh, go ahead.
I'm generally in that camp too. I think it's very educational to try as hard as you can to like intuit the author's intent from the book, if it's possible,
right,
and try to do it. But the benefit of that is for someone who is curious and wants to make that discovery, which is generally where I am, especially as a game designer. I want to see that in what happens when you just follow the rules.
Right.
There was a period on story games many years ago, old again, where this was a thing that a few people were like, I'm going to take AD&D and play it exactly the way it's written, like exactly.
Yep.
The turn order, the rations and equipment load, and just everything exactly the way it's written, and see what type of play it produces. And a bunch of other people started doing that with other games, and it became this huge like discovery of, oh, wait a minute, that stuff that at first blush you go, well, no one's going to keep track of that. That's stupid. If you actually do it, it has all these interesting, knock on effects and stuff. So yeah, I have been in that camp for sure, that it's definitely worth meeting the game where it is. Yep. But for those players and GMs that aren't doing it to make discoveries, they want to have a comfortable, fun evening of gaming with their friends, and they know their friends and they know their own styles, and they look at the thing and they go, well, obviously we can't use this part of it. This isn't going to work for us. I'm changing that. And we're going, no, just try it. But they're like, trust me, this is not, it's not going to work for them. I'm changing it. And, somewhere in that spectrum is also the people that do it and they shouldn't be changing it, and the people that stick with it who should be changing it. And, it's all over the place, but yeah,
it is all over the place.
I'm not against your pet peeve at all. I think
yeah. And it's a bit of a confession, right? Because I sound like a, you play wrong kind of person, which I am not, right? Like freaking do you, boo, like knock yourself out, however you have fun, but just try it maybe and see, and it leads me to something that happens to me all the time too, where somebody, finds out about the podcast or so on and so forth. And they're like, do you play D&D? And I go through my little D&D speech, which is, I love that D&D exists. I love that 5e exists. I think it's wonderful what it has done for the hobby. And I know a ton of people find a tremendous amount of joy in it. And what inevitably I come down to is that I'm not very much into tactical combat in an RPG. That's just not, I find joy in that playing miniature games. I don't need it in my RPGs. And D&D is a combat game. And I'm not interested in roll, miss, roll, hit, take off things. That's just not my thing. God bless you if it's yours, right? And inevitably someone will go, well, that's not how I run combat in D&D. And my initial reaction, and I've learned to keep my mouth shut because I sound like a little bit of an asshole. You're not playing D&D anymore.
Yeah.
And that's great, but don't defend it. Because that's not what you're doing anymore. What you're doing is you're adapting it, right? But I've learned to keep my mouth shut because my message I find is pure, but boy, does it come off wrong every time I deliver it.
Yeah, no, I get that totally. Like what the playing that definition game, it just almost never goes anywhere good. And
no good conversation ends with that.
Yeah, especially with something as big. Well, maybe not as much as it used to be, but D&D used to be a lot more diverse, I think. And it still is if you count the OSR. But it used to be like, it was so ubiquitous, like somebody playing Star Frontiers they're playing D&D, or, that's the way people thought about it. And having those, and people would still have the definition fights and say, well, no, it isn't. It's not D&D in space. It's different. And I don't think anyone ever came out of any of those conversations any smarter or happier
or looking any better. It's true. There's a lot of glasses getting pushed up in that process off the nose, but that's about it. Yeah. So, John, when I first got the document, one, like I said, I was shocked. Of all the things I expected John to give me a sneak peek at, it was not this. And there's a part of me too that I'm surprised you're not sick of the game. I think that's a miracle, quite frankly. Yeah. And I went through it and it was overwhelming in my first read, and not in a bad way. I was just like, there's just a ton of shit. Mm-hmm. We could spend the next 7 hours going through each one of them and I could pick your brain on it. But what I'm really interested in, John, is is there any of these different things, whether it's the expanded lore, whether it's the, the changes to the crew, the different modular rules that you put together, is there anything in the book there that you think took a very interesting creative journey?
Yeah, I guess I'll hit on a couple things. The setting material, the factions and technology, and some spoilery secret things that people can add. Most of that stuff came from play either in our own games, even like before the final publication, or since. I cut, I don't even remember what it was, at least 24 factions from the core Blades book.
Wow.
I say cut, like it was obvious that was going to be way too many
it's on time
for people. Yeah. There's still a bunch, and it's hard to digest them for some people as it is now. I cut back, and then we cut back again where some of the factions ended up just being like in a list with a brief description, because having full write-ups for all of them was just too much for people to digest.
Yep.
So some of those are in deep cuts because they already existed. And over the years, people have been like, why aren't there write-ups for these? That's driving me crazy. Like, why did you just put a single sentence in? And I was like, well, we have them, so we should share them. And then the other part of it is things that either got cut that I wish we had been able to keep, or groups and agendas and politics that came up through play that at watching APs, I see like, oh man, people always, this type of thing consistently comes up in Blades. Like the unionization stuff and labor movement stuff is like a few sentences in the core book, and almost everybody ends up, obviously, I mean, we can probably know why it comes into play so strongly. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Like every time I play, we end up with the union faction and the union busting part of the cops and the community support stuff, and Sean's vigilantes crew stuff comes in sometimes. Yeah. And I'm like, this is it happens so much. Why not give people some support here and have specific, like fully written up factions that are specifically about that you can obviously be like, okay, here are the kind of like revolutionary science guys that are undermining the spark rights, and here's the labor movement, and here's the free hulls that are not controlled by masters anymore. And if you want to play that type of game, here you now you have these tools.
Yep.
And then conversely, on the other side, the like overly oppressive empire stuff, people tend to go in that direction too, where it becomes more of a police state, and the military starts appearing on the street corners, especially if your crew is just like a huge problem for the powers that be. So why not? Okay, well, let's have these factions that show that the militarization of society is mounting. And when that starts to happen in your game, you can go, okay, cool. Here's this Imperial airship that comes and parks over the city. Now things are much more dire. And so taken as
people
a whole,
wearing red hats.
Yeah, right. Taken as a whole, there's a bunch of factions to digest there, but they are kind of like, I've seen this pattern over and over again, that this is the type of stuff that people want, and why not give them something they can quickly latch onto? And then it's fun in the writing to see the connections between those and create all these little little backdoors through everything, and be like, okay, this person's named this in this faction, and yes, they are that last name. They are part of this other faction too, who's doing this secret thing, because that's just fun. And it's something I know people like in the Blades book, is to sort of mine through and see these little connections and make their own correlations to things. So that was the faction part of it. Anyway, we can talk about systems too, but
well, the one thing about the faction piece, I look forward to running Blades again, because I feel like that's one aspect in the 4 or 5 times I've run like full campaigns of it that I've not really like just dove into the deep end of the pool. And the piece that I regret, and it's what I was immediately drawn to as I was going through deep cuts, is that it inspired me. Like, now I need to run Blades. It's like this is stuff that I have not fully experienced with it.
I've heard that. Yeah. People's reactions to deep cuts is it's like, man, we haven't played for like 4 years, but now I want to play again because I have these things I want to use. Yeah.
And I might not use anything in deep cuts, but just going back to it, right, and diving into it is pretty exciting. But it also leads to something that I've always meant to ask you about, John. You have been so free about the structure of Blades in the Dark. Forged in the Dark is huge and has created some incredible games that are very close to Blades, and some, like I think about Wild Sea and Slug Blaster, which are inspired by, right? But have become their own thing in the same way that Blades became its own thing, even though it might have been born, from the bakers at some point.
Yeah.
But something that I get a feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are very tight about the setting and the lore. And I would like to get an idea why that is.
There's a couple things. One, I used to always say, like, I think was when Lady Blackbird came out, like the system was Creative Commons, but not the setting. Yeah. And they asked that question, like, why not just make it all open? And I would joke at the time, like, well, if Steven Spielberg wants to make a Lady Blackbird movie, he's got to pay me for it. It's not open in that sense. And that turns out not to be less of a joke, working on the Blades TV production and stuff, like that. I own the IP, and so I can make all the decisions about it in any other types of media or future products and stuff like that. It's not about controlling it per se. It just makes it so much easier for me to, when I'm talking to someone about a new project, I'm the only person they got to talk to. It's my thing. I create the setting, warts and all. It's no one else's responsibility. Yeah. And it's a little loose, to be frank. Like, I'm not out there tracking people down and being like, hey, you got to take down your PDF because you're using too much of my material or whatever. Yeah. That's all cool. Like, it's still a hobby thing. And like, I'm not going to be litigious about it. Right. But I do like how easy it is for people to make stuff for the game. And inside the setting, the Drakes, right? They have a bunch of cool scores and all kinds of stuff that is in the setting of Blades and does add to it in that IP sense. But and they can do that. Yep. But I still like make all the decisions about how the IP gets used in the world. So kind of it makes it a little gray, but it also just makes me feel better that there isn't somebody using that setting or the IP in a way that I would just completely object to. And like, because I just sort of set it out there and who knows what horrible thing is going to pop up with all of my character names and stuff attached to it that I don't want to be associated with, or,
tired search term on Pornhub.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, it's bad enough on Pinterest now because AI art is polluting everything. And now just used to be when I would search, sometimes I'm searching for like kind of gothic-y looking stuff for a project I'm working on to get some inspiration. And my art from Blades will pop up in the search, which is always amusing. But if you just search for Blades in the Dark itself, you'll find all these cool artists that do fan art and characters and stuff. And you'll find a bunch of AI garbage that's trained on that as a term that can mimic the look, in a really shitty way. But
tell me how you feel, John.
But that's kind of goes back to that IP thing where I'm like, in a different world, like I would be tracking all those people down and sending them cease and desists and, like, get this shit out of here. I don't want the name of this associated with that garbage. So yeah, that's why I'm kind of hold on to it.
So in a future world or a multiverse, John, if you could pick one other media for us to see Duskfall or listen to Duskfall or read Duskfall, do you have a sense, like, do you in a dream world imagine a movie? Do you in your dream world imagine a book series, a TV series? Do you have a sense of a media that you think could capture it?
Yeah, I think the live action TV, what Warp Films is doing, no one has seen any of it except me. And it's still, pre-production, but what they're thinking of doing and in collaboration with some of my ideas, and it fits it so well that mostly because Blades, the design of the game came from watching those shows, these episodic crime shows, Peaky Blinders and Narcos and all those, The Wire and all that. And so it's kind of going back to its roots, and it feels like that's how it should exist. It should be the thing that it's emulating, as at the table. That's the expression of the thing.
Yep.
And I could see it in animation too. Something like Arcane is like super cool looking and would suit Blades really well. But Warp and I both are like very hot for live action and finding the right people to do it. And it's a total dream for that to happen. But I've talked to other people. There's been some comic book inquiries here and there, and some other things that didn't materialize. It's often kind of first time people that are very excited and want to do something and are excited about Blades, but it's not it's not a good fit for that. So yeah, with Warp, we'll see. The nature of that business is it takes 4 years for frickin' Stranger Things to make a season, and it's one of the most popular shows on TV. So it's just wait. But I'm still excited. I'm not burned out on that. Speaking of burnout,
is it frustrating?
Yeah, it is a little frustrating, but that's changed over time as I've learned more about the business and really been educated in like how things get done in that space. The glacial pace that can suddenly become like extremely fast, and close calls and like all the way up to the doorstep kind of stuff. And that can be frustrating, but Warp is great. They're amazing partners to work with. They're really creative and cool. And a quick plug for if people haven't seen it, their new series Adolescence is on Netflix right now.
Oh my God, I didn't make the connection.
Yeah, that's
Holy
Warp's
shit. That show, John?
Yeah.
That show?
I know.
Holy cow.
It's hard. I should say warn people.
That show goes real hard.
It is brutal to watch. It's wonderfully, wonderfully made, but it's
incredible piece
of art. It's intense, very intense.
But I didn't make the connection that, oh shit, now I'm really excited.
Yeah. So that's heartening, they have a good relationship there.
Have found good hands. Holy shit.
It's also, I mean, who knows? I'm just speculating, but and
but it's better than had they put out a shit show.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So that's good.
And it's just proof of the quality of those folks, because I talk them up all the time, and it's fun to be able to point and go, look what they make. They're not messing around. I didn't even
connect it. That's funny.
Really cool.
You have in a long tradition have been very generous about letting the system run free and find homes and be messed with, ruined in some cases, and improved because of what they are doing with it for their setting in that thing. How hard has that been with Warp for you? Is it this more precious for you? Or are you allowing ideas to come in? Or are you doing a lot of, like what are those conversations like?
It's been really collaborative. They get it. The initial team were playing the game at the office, so they understood it really well. And before we talked, and so initially I was kind of the subject matter expert type role, where they already kind of got it and had some ideas for how that first season, what it might look like. And, of course, writers have come in and fleshed that out. And I got to make kind of my dream document, like, here's what I want, and here's all the people who I would cast. And in most cases, they're all people that have worked with them before. They've done a bunch of stuff since This Is England in 81. They've worked with everybody. So I kind of got to pick and choose people I wanted who also happened to work with them on other projects. And so that was fun. It was just like very dream stuff in the early days. And then to have them look through that and go, great, like no changes, no notes. Wow. We love it. Was really heartening. And then as we went along, like, they're asking me this business, stuff like, this is what we think we should do. We've been doing this for over 30 years professionally, but what do you want to do? And I was just so taken aback. Like, I think we should go with what you want to do here. Yeah. You clearly are the experts, but they were like, no, we want you to make the decision. This is
Jesus. That's great.
And it's wild. It's been really, really awesome to have that back and forth. And especially with the writers coming in. The one of the writers was not familiar with Blades coming in at first, so they had their own idea of it that was slightly different and really cool, and started to show like, okay, maybe what this show is a little off from what people are going to expect it to be. It's like turned a little, which then started to make me excited again. And like people are going to expect it's going to be exactly like what's in the book, but it's not really going to be. It's going to be very close, but it's going to have surprises for people who already know it. And so yeah, it's been so much fun, and that's the mode I'm in now. I'm over this is taking too long kind of frustration phase of the thing, and now it's just like, this is just nothing but fun. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just just a good time.
Well, and in that business, it doesn't happen until it does happen. Yeah. Unfortunately. That's a big soapbox for me. I'm glad to hear you say that, John, because that's a huge soapbox for me. I'm a firm believer that the material has to change as you change mediums. You can't, like, people go, well, that wasn't like the book. Well, it's because it's not the book. Right. And the example I bring up over and over again is Snyder's Watchmen. I think that movie is as close to a direct adaptation of that comic book that I've ever seen, any comic to film I've ever seen. You can have the Watchmen book in front of you and flip through panel by panel and track the whole thing. And as a result, though I liked the movie, I think it's a bad movie.
Yeah, I had that reaction too.
Yeah, because I don't think you just can't do that. So I'm excited by the idea that you're letting loose a little bit, John. I like that you're letting it happen. That you know that. So this was obviously an episode devoted to Blades in the Dark, the TV series. Let's go back to Deep Cuts for a second.
We took a weird turn there, yeah.
That never happens on my show. I do want to talk about some of the modular rules, and then I do want to talk about the catalysts. So can we talk about some of the modular rules, ones that, let me put it this way, John. Someone gets Deep Cuts, and they're like, God, there's all these different things, the diceless downtime and everything. I don't know, like, I don't want to do all of them, right? I want to run Blades, maybe try one of them. Would you recommend one? Would you say, you know what, if you're going to just pick one for your first time, kind of hacking this a little bit and using deep cuts, where do you think is a place to start?
The lowest impact, especially we're in this limbo right now. The Roll20 components and customizable sheets and stuff don't exist yet. There's a fan one that's pretty good actually, but that stuff is coming. So integrating that manually now is kind of annoying. You can do it. It's not like it's impossible, but once the Roll20 stuff is in place, it'll be way easier to just pick and choose and it'll all just work. But for a minimal impact at the table, if you're doing it by hand, harm and trauma are very easy to integrate. They don't really impact any other subsystems or anything. And they address along with healing in the new downtime, but they address some frustrations people have with harm in Blades, and
which is
the main one that I hear is it's too hard to heal, which, I'm not sympathetic to that. I'm like, well, yeah, that's the way this world works. And if you get shot, you're going to be injured for a long time, and there's no healing potions. And, some people have this expectation that, between adventures, you heal back to full and you go out again. And this is a walking wounded game. That's what it's supposed to be. It grinds your characters up, and their lives are tough. And if it's too hard for you, I don't care. But at your own table, when I see people really frustrated by it, I'm like, well, you can change that so healing is easier. So here's an alternate way of doing it. It's going to cost maybe more money. It might be a little troublesome in different ways, but you can have a situation where you're kind of coming back to full again each time you do a score. And if you really want that, you can have it. So it's addressing that part of the frustration. The other one is, and this has happened in my games, it doesn't really with this system, but it used to be that people would forget harm all the time. Like,
I can see.
Just so much at the end of the session, someone would be like, oh man, I was supposed to be taking a die penalty this whole session. I forgot that I had that wound. And usually we're just like, whatever, it's fine. So I started implementing, and I would say this to like any AP people that I saw or like posted on social media, and like, if you just want to make one change, just add this to the bottom of the sheet for XP at the end of the session. If you've suffered from harm, trauma, or your vices, you take your XP. And so now players are like, I got to remember my harm because I get 1 XP for that. And that fixed it, but that it's not very interesting. So this is kind of a middle ground where harm and trauma, it does give you XP for when it impedes your character. It's kind of like a compel and fate, sort of, like if you want to look at it that way.
Oh, good call. I didn't even make that connection. Yeah.
Similar to that.
Yeah.
But it also lets it still be very narrative driven and very fiction driven. But instead of it always being like very mandated, like, well, it's less effect this time, or now it's a die penalty and now it's this, it can be as devastating or as light as you want it to be in the moment. So you have a lot more on-screen kind of control instead of just going, well, it has to be 1 die penalty here. You can be like, yeah, you're like crawling across the floor. You can barely move. And the player can be like, yeah, totally. That's what's happening. Or being seduced or manipulated or whatever. If everyone's buying into that and you want to be like, yeah, I just surrender. Bajabaz is too intimidating for my character to deal with. I'm going to take that as harm, and I'm just going to put my guns down, and I'm going to take my XP
nice.
for playing into my harm. And I'm going to have this immediate consequence in the narrative instead of just a mechanical penalty.
Right. Yep.
And for groups that want it to be a little more freewheeling, I've got a cool looking cut across my cheek and I wipe the blood away and I say, bring it on. Like, okay, maybe I don't get XP for being impeded by my harm, but I'm cool and I'm this like action hero or whatever. And trauma's kind of in that same boat where you can have it be really impactful or not.
Yep.
And let the group decides. Cool. Yeah. And then there's a caveat too with the new trauma module where there's a potential road to recovery for traumas. They are permanent, so to speak, but and there's no system for it. But in the fiction, you have to like propose a path towards recovering your trauma, which is something people have talked about over the years of Blades. Like, that's not really how trauma works. Like, you can deal with it. You can address these things. And in an RPG, for Blades, it made sense to be like, no, your character burns out and that they're done because that was the arc of play. But the messaging of that, it was messy, and people wanted some kind of guidance around, wouldn't it be cool if my grizzled veteran who's burning out comes back from that and finds a way to keep going and or comes out of retirement or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting reading it, John, because I found myself like reading parts of it and going, I get it. I get why, someone would like this. It's just not for me. Whereas other parts would get me really excited as well. And the one in particular, which is, I told you I wanted to talk about 2 things. This is not one of the things I mentioned. So welcome to my show. I need someone to make a case for diceless downtime. And I'm not criticizing the design of it. I think it's a very, very interesting thing, but it would, and this is now I'm my own pet peeve. I have not tried it yet, right? So I have strong opinions about something I've never done before, John. I have a hard time imagining I'll make time for that because of how much I enjoy downtime now. Mm-hmm. And full transparency, the person who unlocked downtime for me was watching Logan run Blades.
Yeah, honestly.
He's the one that made me realize just how freaking cool downtime can be, right?
Yeah.
So what's the case for diceless downtime? Is it just a situation for somebody who just doesn't get into it?
Well, no, I think it can be quicker, and it can be done away from the table, which some people like to do. So when you show up next week, everyone's done their downtime. You don't need the GM watching you make the dice rolls. You've done it. And I don't like to do that because, like you said, it's a very meaty part of the game, of the role-playing part of the game. Yes. So for a group like Jared's, I think something like a diceless downtime or a mix would work really well for them because they they want to get into the scene work. They want to get into their character work, and they're plotting against each other and discovering secrets. And they don't necessarily need to roll to acquire that asset. They want to do the activity of acquiring the asset, and they want to have the scene where they talk to the gun dealer and go to the place they shouldn't go and get observed by the guy they don't want to know they're doing it and all that stuff. The dice roll that isn't necessary, but for people who want that, both things, like we're doing the play here and we're getting into our character, and also it might be a waste of time. Our precious downtime. I roll a 2 and I don't get the thing I wanted. Some people love that, and they want that tension, and like it's tough to be a scoundrel. You can always not get what you really want, and you can take risks for things that you don't come together. And I like that. I mean, I designed downtime with dice.
You're an advocate.
Yeah. But having run it the other way, I have noticed in some cases people go a little harder. They lean more sometimes into the role play part of it, because they're not just sort of accounting. Okay, I get a die for this and that, and I get 1 for that, and now how can I get another die? I really want 4. And instead they're like, okay, well, where are we? Who are you talking to? Where are you going? Yeah. Because it's just going to be a series of trade-offs and choices instead of like system, building up advantages and stuff.
That's super interesting, John, because you're describing the exact opposite of how I interpreted that section, because I took it, and I don't mean to sound flippant, I took it as very hand wavy. But now I do understand what you're saying, which could be, Craig, it could be the exact opposite. If you're into like role playing downtime, maybe it's exactly what you need. I think the only thing that breaks it for me, and understand this is me, right? Like there's going to be people that are going to try this and are going to be like, thank God, this is the greatest thing ever. It's the part that I struggled with. I'm also finding a lot of joy in role playing by when we introduce dice, we roll dice, and we believe the dice. And I'm finding so much joy in the hobby figuring that out, right? And downtime allows that for me. And one of the big things that I've learned too about your game is session 0. Something that is super important I found in session 0 is you're gonna have so many superpowers, right? Flashbacks and all these things, but life for your character is going to suck. And I think that's something you don't realize when you read the book. It's something that you realize when you play the book as written, is like, we're going to grind the shit out of your character. And that's an expectation that I think I have learned you have to set, because especially if you've got somebody who's never played, high fantasy or superhero fantasy, they're going to be like, oh, wait, what? I did all of this and I don't even get to click one of the ticks on the clock. I'm like, nope, let's go do another score. So, you've changed how I've thought about it. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. They're modular and optional for that reason. They're to be played with and tried and used or discarded. I'm
realizing what a hypocrite I am. I'm such a hypocrite because I'm like, I've never played this. I have strong opinions. I've spent a whole speech about people saying their opinion about something that I never tried, and then I did exactly that.
Well, I mean, this has happened since Deep Cuts has come out. It's exactly like the G+. Like everybody showed up. Oh God. To play test Blades at G+. Everyone had opinions before they played, and we're like, well, obviously this can't work, and obviously I don't want this. This is bad. And then they play it, and they're like, well, okay, I kind of see what this is. And it happened with Deep Cuts too. Like a week after the PDF came out, on Reddit or Discord or whatever, people are like, they had just read it, only read it, and they're like, I'm skeptical. Here's my 7-point, guide to why this is.
How do you handle that, John? How do you handle
I just wait because that person shows up the next week and goes, well, we played it, and okay, so we liked these 3 things actually, and I still don't like this other part, and like, okay, but you've played it and you're informed, and that's just the internet. People want to have strong opinions. They want to come in, and in some cases, people have been playing Blades for like 10 years, and they're they do understand what they want and what that's going to happen at their table. Yes. And they can look at it and go, well, I'm going to do this and this. I'm definitely not doing that even before they play it. And part of me is still like, you should still try it probably. But, and there's that, kind of stop hitting yourself thing too, which comes up a lot where somebody will, there's a set of options. There's 5 things and one of them works great for them, but they don't really like the other ones. Yep. And so they're like, well, I don't want to use this. And I'm like, well, don't pick the ones, any of these 4, you can pick any of these 4.
Right.
So pick the one that you like instead of chucking the whole thing out. That's why there's options.
It's not, I think one of the first things I figured out, John, is this is not the second edition of Blades.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think is a big deal. And I think you can, and I'm saying this, I thought that's what I was looking at first. I was like, oh, Jesus, is this? And then I realized that the toolbox nature of it, both from a lore perspective as well as from a mechanical perspective. Last thing, John, I want to talk about is something that I found very exciting and very interesting and unexpected is the catalyst. Can you give me an idea of where that comes from? Like where did that first appear in your head that this could be really interesting?
This particular catalyst, a catalyst is what I call, for viewers at home, something to add to your game series that is like going to shake it up. That's going to change the nature of the world and the factions and everything. It's something I do on and off in different games that I run, especially if we've played them a bunch or they're very familiar to people. I like to have something that's going to turn the boat in a weird direction or be a surprise or not like a gotcha thing, but just like, we're not just going to do the same thing again. This is going to be different this time. And I've done a bunch of different ones in Blades and in other games over the years. And I was thinking about this, like, again, my like banging on the glass kind of thing. Like I want it. Hey, try something, this is something you can try in your games. So I went through my various sort of catalysts that I'd done before. And this one seemed like a good fit. It's a little out there for some people, but I'm being vague because it's kind of spoilery. If
you had to be careful.
GMs might not want their groups to like really know, but I've been watching some shows that touch on the nature of some of this stuff, which it has to do with the ghost field. I'll say a little bit about it.
Sure.
The ghost field in the game, it touches the world of the living and the world of the dead, and ghosts can exist in both places. And there's kind of an idea that's always been in Blades that various groups have toyed around with too, where that place, that ghost field dimension, like maybe it touches other places and maybe it extends elsewhere. And the stuff Tim Denay's doing for Blades 68 is kind of taking that ghost field idea in a new direction too. It's that kind of science-y, paranormal kind of stuff, which is really cool. And this is in correspondence with that. Tim and I emailed back and forth a bunch about changes in deep cuts that are, you see the beginnings of things that are coming to fruition in Blade 68. And that's been really fun to collaborate with him on that. But yeah, so this one is something that shakes up the Empire, gives them a new fear to worry about, a new reason to become even more oppressive and more controlling, and puts the Empire itself at this precipice of catastrophe, potentially, which is a great place for scoundrels to make money and exploit weaknesses. And so I wanted to package all this up as this kind of inciting events, a mystery for the players to engage with and learn about, and then a bunch of handholds for each one per crew type, a set of scores to run that are like going to get you in there and let you, profit or suffer from what's going on. And I hope that that's also just like a general kind of template for other people to make their own. And also just for GMs setting out their next series. If it's not a big world shaking event, you can use that template and say, okay, my world shaking event is the war in Crowsfoot is over. All those gangs wipe themselves out in our last series. When we're starting again, it's 5 years later. There's a whole new situation here.
Exactly.
And it's shaken everything up. It's shaken up all the factions and loyalties. It's created all these different opportunities for crews. And here's your like package for your campaign.
It was really interesting for me to read. So you codify some things that can happen naturally in the game, and which I think is really, really, really interesting. The template piece of it, what I think is very inspiring. Weirdly, John, it gives permission, which nobody needs, but it's really nice to have, which I liked. And the template nature of it, I thought was cool. It's also very interesting to me. And part of what I like about the game is you do define a lot of things. But you do some things, and I know it's purposeful, but that you leave wide open. And one of my favorite things in watching different APs is what is their ghost field? And it's never the same. And it's so fascinating, especially if it's not the GM dictating it, it's the table dictating it. And so that happening and having a codified option in the game, I think is very, very interesting.
It's something that I've seen in APs too. That's always really exciting. And it's another place where you'll have a faction, or not a faction, but like a few people commenting like, I don't know what to do with this. It's not defined very well. Am I supposed to make it up? And I'm like, well, yeah, kind of, but like it also is extremely tropey. That I whenever I leave something that kind of blank, I try to have the other parts of the setting point at it, so they have opinions about it, or that they're entangled in it in some way. And then if possible, have that blank space be very, very tropey. So if you just go to what the first thing you think of, if there are like pirates in this area, and that's all I say, like you got that, no problem. I don't need to tell you any more than that. If it's blank, but it's supposed to be something really specific and my vision, then I should probably like provide more material there. But it's the realm of ghosts, okay, like whatever you come up with there is going to work with the setting and it's going to work with the game. And this takes one step further. So I had to have that. I think you're maybe talking about this. There's a page that kind of gives you like, here's like 5 different things that it could be that are all different from each other. And they're also not fully fleshed out, but I felt the need to step in and go, okay, I'm not going to just totally have a blank page here. Like any of these will work. And hopefully when you see that any of those 5 will work, you realize, well, okay, I have an idea for a cool thing. That's not any of these 5, but it'll also work. Because if these work, mine is going to work. And it's, again, like you said, it's permission that people don't need, but it's a way of highlighting. It's nice
to have. Yeah. It's really nice to have. And it becomes a tool, and it feeds into one of my latest things that I'm absolutely in love with in role-playing games, and relatively new that I'm spending time with, because I have, despite my age, I'm one of the few people my age that role-play that don't love world building. That's, for some people, that is what role-playing is world building. I've just never been into it. It's why I often will grab scenarios and modules just to get a starting point, and then we go off the rails immediately. And I'm very comfortable with that. What I like about this catalyst is it taps into something I'm finding a lot of joy in, is asking a very simple question. We've established this is true. So what is that? Right. In a very sort of in this world microscopes type of way, right?
Yes.
Okay, if we've established that this is a truth, right? We said this is canon now. So now what? And I really, really enjoy that aspect of it. And that's sprinkled in a lot in the lore when you're talking about the different factions and everything. That very, very exciting. Very exciting. That's something I love, is that, and all of role playing to me is that fun. It's tip over this domino, and what are the consequences? If it's a conversation in a room, or if it's an alien invasion, or if it's the sun is shattered and the gates of the land of the dead are cracked up wide open. Like, what happens? There's the dominoes just
just cascade away. And it's always fun. It's always fun to just tip it over and then follow the consequences wherever they lead. Yeah, that's what I always want to do, whether that's at the campaign level or the scene level. Just want to do that over and over and over.
It's a great point, John, because you're right. Because I'm thinking even in the bigger sense, but I find joy in it in just like a comment that's happened. Of course, I have games that are not recorded that I play here at the house, and even online games that I don't record. But the majority of games that I play and run are on record, and I love watching the previous episode while I'm getting ready to run the next one. Some little side comment, some did, and I went, "Oh, I missed that," or "I didn't really think about that." And oh God, when you bring it back into the game, watching the faces light up, it's just absolutely it's the best. The absolute best.
I went back and watched some of my old APs a little while ago. Hard? Not really. It was back closer to when I did it. And I still think I need like a current, like modern Blades game online for people to see. Even though the old ones are fun and I really enjoyed them, but I noticed myself doing that a lot too. And the other thing that I try to tell GMs all the time is that like evil genie kind of ear that you always have on, where someone is doing something, maybe it's a little risky, maybe not, maybe they're being casual about it in a somewhat charged scene, and they make a comment and my ear like twitches, and in the moment I go, wait. When you say that, are you, because they're watching you and their second in command is standing right over there and their head turns when you mention that name.
Yeah.
Are you implying that you already have this relationship with them, or are you being really truthful in the moment and letting it just be how it is? And they weren't trying to do either of those things. It was just like something that what came up in conversation, and all of a sudden now everyone's like, oh shit, oh no. I guess I'm lying about it. Like, okay, make the roll. Now, time to make the roll.
Oh God, that's the juice,
so,
John.
I love that. Juice. Just waiting to hear that moment. It's great.
Yep. It creates some incredible things. So guys, we're going to take one more break. When we get back from this break, I'm going to find out from John, what is his one thing worth sharing? We'll be right back.
This is the part of many podcasts where someone comes on, interrupts the show, and explains that you should consider paying for the content that you're listening to right now for free. That pitchman explains by giving $1 or more a month, you not only support the show, but you allow the show to grow and improve. Here on the third floor, we refuse to interrupt your episode of Tabletop Talk with such time-wasting pleas. We pledge never to run a spot asking you to go to patreon.com and give $1 or more a month, because supporting content creators keeps the content coming, even if there is a link in the show's description. And there is. We don't ask you to click it and become a patron. We don't waste time rambling about the benefits like early access to episodes, getting episodes without ad breaks like this, or even getting a chance to play in one of Craig's RPG sessions. Anyway, enjoy this episode knowing Tabletop Talk, despite being supported by its patrons, won't engage in such blatant appeals for support.
So one of the things I like to do, John, in fact, you and I have a 4-hour episode where we did this, where we talk about things we like. But I'm going to put some constraints on us here. What is one thing worth sharing for you right now?
Yeah, I got this in the show notes, and I was immediately like, oh, this is a great idea. I love the evolution of this to one thing worth sharing. And then I was like, only one thing. That's impossible. I need at least 4 hours. But I'm sticking to it. I am doing one thing. Is something that I just got. It was a present from Allison, which is right behind me here.
Ah.
It is the graphic novel adaptation of Cormac McCarthy's The Road.
Oh shit!
By Manu Laurent, the French, or Larsenet. Sorry, Manu Larsenet. He's a French graphic artist, illustrator. I love The Road. I love the novel.
I've never read it.
It's amazing.
Is it?
John Hillcoat's movie is wonderful. It's a perfect
how do I not know any of this? I didn't know the book. I've never heard of the book or the movie. I mean, it. I love it.
It's
so talk.
So yeah, it's Cormac McCarthy's. It's a post-apocalyptic setting about a guy and his son on a journey from one place to another and dealing with the horrific McCarthyian apocalyptic landscape that's bleak and daunting, and the great father-son story embedded in that. Yeah, the novel's wonderful. I like all of his work, and they're kind of a piece to me. So if you like any of his stuff, you'll probably like it too. But John Hillcoat, the Australian director, did a really great movie adaptation of it with Viggo Mortensen. In 2009, I want to say. He made this amazing Australian Western called The Proposition. I don't know if you've seen that.
No.
It's fantastic. It's also extremely bleak and rough. I
think you and I like dark shit, John.
Yeah, I think so. But this is the graphic novel version. The illustrations are beautiful. Mostly black and white, although there's a little use of color, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And there's this really touching letter in the back that the author sent to McCarthy, kind of pitching and saying, like, I really hope you'll give me permission to do this. It's something I love, and I have a vision for it. And it's just beautiful. And I had never heard of it. Allison and I are both huge Cormac McCarthy fans.
Yeah.
And love The Road. And this came out a while back, and both of us had completely missed it. So I opened it on my birthday and was like, what is this? Like, how?
She must have been so proud of herself.
Yeah, exactly. Like, did this come out yesterday?
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, no, it's been out for years. And we both just somehow didn't know it existed.
So this, John, ties to something we've talked about earlier, which is transferring media, right? So we've got a book, becomes a movie, becomes a graphic novel. How did they do? Did they do a pretty good job of adapting it to the media in all three cases?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. They each one, I mean, the movie adaptation really understands the material, but adapts it to a good screen storytelling structure,
right?
Which obviously the novel doesn't have and doesn't want to have. And it has the right feel to it while delivering a good screen story, which is often, as you said, that's where movies adaptations fall down. And I think it works both ways, actually. I think a lot of people saw the film first. McCarthy was a very successful author, but I don't know if that was like a big hit or anything necessarily. And there are probably a lot of people that saw the movie and then went to the novel, and there's so much more there. And then the graphic novel kind of sits in between, where it doesn't need to have that tight 90-minute plus ish kind of story. It can sprawl a little more. And McCarthy does this great thing as a writer where he is very, spare and terse with his text usually. And there's only occasional bits of dialogue. Usually, sometimes there'll be longer conversations. He also doesn't use quotation marks when people speak. So dialogue just comes in out of nowhere, kind of. You have to really be watching for it, and it makes everything have this weird flow. And so in the graphic novel, the artist has this great permission to have pages of scene and movement and character with no one speaking. And in a film, you can do these wonderful establishing shots, and you have sound and color, and it's beautiful, but you can only hold those for so long.
Yep.
You kind of need to move into the scene work, and you need to move the story forward. With something like this, you can hold that page open on that stillness, and it just lasts, as long as you want it to be there. And it just feels, I don't know, it evokes the novel really well. And then he uses this very rigid panel structure, mixes it up, but there's only a few templates. So it has this very structural look, but then the art is very loose and it's flowing inks.
That's interesting.
So again, it evokes that feeling of McCarthy's prose it's very Spartan, but it feels not rigid. It's just like you're marching across this landscape, and it's wonderful. I was blown away by it.
I'm constantly amazed by graphic novels and comics, right? They're not the same. They are different. But they're born of the same mother. I think about like Scott McCloud's book. Like that. Jeez. You want to talk about a book that changed how I thought about all art, not just
all art. Yes.
Not just
a masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece. And I can't remember Will Eisner's book, but I remember a Will Eisner book. It's got a yellow cover.
Yep.
That just made me like, I remember reading it for the first time going, I knew nothing about comic books and panel art and storytelling in panels. Until I read that. That's what made me think of that, is you talk about that having a 2-page spread with no words. It's very Eisner. And I try to explain this to people who are like, well, I don't get graphic novels. And I'm like, for me, what's so unique about that medium is the concept of pace, because the artist has to impose pace, and there's many techniques that they use to do that. But the reader controls pace, which you don't get in a book, and you don't get in a movie, and you don't get in music or an audiobook or anything. It's very, very interesting. That's cool. That's really cool.
It's always a delight. Any great work is a delight to discover, but a perfect adaptation is rare. And so it was just, especially for something that is I love a lot. So
I think the big thing, and you hinted at it, John, the big thing I want in adaptation is I want to watch something and go, they loved it. Right. So you took this book and you made it a TV series. I know you loved that book. Yeah. You made some changes, you did think, but I can tell you loved it. And this is controversial. I did not hate the Netflix Last Airbender live action.
I didn't either. I am a huge fan of the original.
Oh,
and
my God.
I enjoyed the live action version.
I did too. And the whole thing for me was, you guys get it. You get it. And what was a miracle for me in that adaptation is my daughter and I, since she was old enough to watch Airbender, that's been her and I's thing. I've, no bullshit, have probably seen beginning to end all seasons at least 15, 20 times. It's, in my opinion, one of the very few perfect media that exists.
I 100% agree. Yes.
Oh, it's just so incredible.
It's amazing.
And it was, so the Netflix series was doomed to fail for me.
Me too.
And for my daughter.
I just assumed it was terrible.
Oh, I just assumed too. My wife just doesn't like animation, which is fine. She loved the TV series.
That's great.
Like, it broke through, which I think is.
I don't want to say anything spoilery because people should watch it, but they change some stuff.
They did. And I was good with it.
There's a few, and one very particular thing. And I was very impressed. I was actually, too. As a huge fan of the original, that change came in and I was like, this is really smart. This is a really, really smart change. I didn't expect to like it, and I really didn't expect to like any changes like that. And
no, I
liked both of them. Yeah, it was wild.
It did help, and this ties into obviously the people who made this loved the source material. The casting was
it's so good, so good. It's
outstanding.
Everyone is perfect in their role. Ozai. I mean, everyone's great, but it's this reminded me Jeff Vandermeer, who wrote the Southern Reach trilogy, Annihilation, and
never read them, but I know what you're talking about.
He was talking about the film adaptation. I think it was during the press tour for the movie. I just blanked on the director's name. I know him anyway. They were together at a press event, and the journalist, of course, is saying like, "What do you think about this?" And adapting your work and everything. And it's very, like, the movie has a bunch of very different things in it. The stuff that isn't in the novel at all. And Jeff was just like, yeah, I'm on board for this whole thing, for this ride. I know that they love the book, and I don't want them to make my book. I want them to make their movie.
Yes.
And he was just saying, like, I'm so excited to see. I didn't make a bunch of this stuff that's in it.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see, you know, something come out of it that isn't just rote from what I wrote. And that is such a hard line to walk. You want to have someone who shows love for it, but doesn't smother it. Like, you know, I think that's what, to me, that's kind of what killed Mandalorian and into Boba Fett and stuff. Like, it started out, it had its own point of view. It was the wandering hero, Western town to town, so refreshing. And then it just got smothered by people who really love Star Wars and were like, they just wanted to put in all their favorite toys, and it felt like it died because it wasn't their thing anymore. It was just like, wouldn't it be cool to see X? You know?
Yeah. So this is the worst one thing to share episode. Another version of that. I know we're so bad. The other version of that for me, and I want to know, have you seen Alien Romulus?
Yes.
So I thought it was very good, and I'm glad I watched it. But one thing ruined it for me. And it was bringing back that character.
Yep. Me too.
And it wasn't the fact that it was bad CGI, because it was.
It was.
Because it could have been perfect CGI, and I still would have hated it. And the thing for me was, and the Boba Fett thing, you think of this, the thing for me is it was so unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing gained by doing it. It would have been shockingly even more interesting from a lore perspective if it wasn't him.
Yeah.
Right. Because that would imply that there's, you know, tales to be told. Right. So that it wasn't just him. And it made me so angry because it's the same asshole that said, let's do a Boba Fett series and let's ruin Mandalorian in the process. Right.
It makes me wonder if there was a mandate of some kind, you know, that there had to be that kind of attachment. And
you can't just like, let's for Christ's sake, let's tell new stories.
Yeah. Because it was, the thing I loved about it the most is it's a very fun, satisfying kind of modern slasher movie.
Yes.
That happens to be set in the Alien universe. Yep. But it is a successful, it's good at being the type of movie that it is. It just happens to be set in that universe.
Exactly.
And in the same way that Aliens is like that. Yep. It's a good military action movie that happens to be in the Alien universe.
No, it's very, very different. It
almost just threaded that needle, and I still liked it.
I did too. I'm
not a huge fan of that genre, actually, and that director's other stuff. That I know that they're good examples of that kind of modern slasher style.
Yep.
But watching this kind of got me into it a little more, and I was like, oh, okay, I see why this is good. I should go back and watch some of these other ones.
Yeah, I'm very picky with the reimagining of the slasher genre. I'm very, very picky. Part of it is because I somehow I have some sort of jurisdiction over it. I covet a good slasher just because it's so hard to do. But man, God, when it's done well, I just love it so much. Like the 3X movies from A24 with Mia Goth. I just think it's another example. I watched all three of those movies. Some I like better than others. Watched all three of them going, he gets it.
Yeah.
He understands slashers the way that I love slashers. All right. So my one thing to share.
Yes.
And I'm super excited by the slim chance, John, that you have not watched this yet, because I watched this and I was like, and I stopped myself when I knew we were going to have an interview, because I am prone to send you and Allison like, hey, have you guys seen this type of stuff? Like, because there's stuff I seen. I'm like, I think John and or Allison would dig this. Are you watching Mobland?
No, but it is on our radar. And I'm so glad that you're recommending it, because I was already excited about it, but that makes me want to just jump on it right now.
So let me tell you my short little journey with Mobland. Paramount Plus, one of the many things that annoy the piss out of is their self-promoting of their own shows. Like I can't, like I didn't select that show. I selected this show. Let me watch the freaking show I selected, right?
Yeah.
But they have to run, and I would see ads for it. I'm like, the last thing I want to see is another one of these movies or another one of these TV series. I got Peaky Blinders. I've watched Guy Ritchie. Like, I'm good. I don't need this again. And on a whim, I was like, screw it, because I do love Tom Hardy, and I like Pierce Brosnan too. I'm like, I'm gonna watch this, dude. 20 minutes in, I was hooked, and I think so good that I had to stop myself and go to my wife and say, "You need to watch this with me, and you need to catch up so I can keep watching." And you know what? This is not her genre. She does not watch this type of a TV show, and hooked.
Nice.
It's so good. And it's, you know, it is, and this is a big deal for me to say, it is peak Tom Hardy. Which, you know, after Alfie, that's a pretty high bar. It's him. Pierce Brosnan is brilliant. No, it's not a surprise, but it's a very different role for her as Helen Mirren.
Oh yeah, right. I forgot she was in that. Awesome.
Dude. And she looks like shit on purpose. Like they have like made her look worse and old. And she is a character that here's the thing. You watch that show and you have an opinion about every single one of those characters. Like you care. Even if you hate them, you care about them. The last show that did that for me is Succession, which is like every character in Succession. I have an opinion. I want to talk about those characters with you. And if a show can inspire that,
I need to. I know.
Oh.
I know. Yeah.
Watch Mobland first.
Okay. Yeah. We're definitely watching Mobland. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad to hear you liked it.
Yeah, it's good.
We watched another crime show, Peaky Blinders, it made by Stephen Estonite, made by the guy.
Yep.
1,000 Blows. Did you watch that?
Ooh, no.
Yeah, it's just a mini series. Well, they might do another season. I don't know, but it's a mini series, British mini series. So it's like 6-7 episodes.
Oh, I like him. Who's that actor?
That's Stephen Graham. He is my casting for Bajo Baz. He's in Adolescence. He's in all of Warp's stuff, actually.
Oh. Malachi Kirby.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
It's great. It's about the 40 Elephants. I don't know if you know about that gang.
No.
The all-women street gang in Victorian London.
Amazing, no.
Yeah. Oh, man. They're notorious, legendary. It's about them primarily, and then the arrival of the Marquis of Queensberry's boxing rules.
Super interesting.
Upsetting the bare-knuckle, the underworld illegal fight situation. So yeah, it's great.
Awesome.
Only one thing though, only one thing to share.
Yeah. We did. Hey, it was the first run. You were the worst person to try it out.
I know. It's terrible.
Oh, good Lord. Well, John, on a Tuesday afternoon or a Tuesday evening, there's a lot of things you can do, like sit down and go watch Mobland. But once again, you wasted some time with me, and I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love these chats. I will come back anytime.
Okay, wonderful. Hey, for those of you listening, guess what? It's the end. You made it through the whole thing, and I appreciate you doing that. And if you've got enough spoons, take care of yourself. And if you got a little extra, take care of somebody else. Hey, are you still here? Look, the podcast is over. And you sat through all of the breaks and bloopers? Well, I mean, if you're here, you might as well run over to patreon.com and become a supporter. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast too while you're at it, on whatever platform you're listening to. I do appreciate you sticking around. Take care.